Nikon created the 16-35 f4 for DSLR back in 2010. They also created the 14-24 f2.8 back in September of 2020. Both of them are rival siblings, but they work perfect under the new Z line of cameras that just came out. Both are great glasses. The 16-35 runs at about $1,000, while the 14-24 runs about $2,100. They run parallel lines that accomplish different tasks, but merge near the point of origin. So as far as quality, the 16-35 is a great lens, but it's mostly plastic. Hard plastic, that is. It feels great in the hands, and focusing manually or moving the focal length is pretty simple and easy. But one of the features that you have to keep in mind is that if you want to use this lens for video, it's not one of the best. And that's because it's noisy. If you have the microphone far away, not a big problem, but up close and the microphone right on top of it, it will be an issue. The focal length ring is smooth, but it's also noisy. But it also incorporates a couple other good features within, and that's the fact that you can go manual or manual automatic. It has that switch for that. It has VR incorporated onto the lens, which is a very nice feature that it's lacking in the new Z-line lenses. Ultra-wide lenses are not known for having filter thread mounts, and having that ability to put a filter onto this glass is extremely nice, it's extremely cheap, and it will give you any look you're after. This lens is also slightly heavier than the Z-mount lens. It becomes even heavier once you adapt the F2Z mount. That F2Z mount adapter will make it a lot heavier, but you still get the length that you require beyond 24 millimeters. Being an f4, the 16-35 lens is very sharp. It's at par with that of the 14-24. The 14-24 benefits over this one over the fact that it's a 2.8, but when you compare the images, you get to know, or you get to see the fact that they are both almost about the same, if not the same, and sometimes I feel that the 16-35 has a much better image. But the colors is where they differ, and the 16-35 is a much warmer lens than that of the Z-line lens, which is a 14-24. You may lose a little girth on the 16-35, but you still got the length. The length is what matters here, and the 16-35 exceeds and surpasses that of the 14-24, which is only girth, but it will not give you that reach that you're after. So you gain reach, you gain length out of the 16-35, but that's not the reason why you get this lens. It is not to be shooting zoomed in. It is actually to shoot at its largest focal length, which is 14 or 16. But since both lenses are different, let's make them even at 16. When you shoot at 16, they're both virtually the same. You cannot tell the difference except for the tonality. Like I said, the 16-35 is warmer and the 14-24 is a little more blue. When it comes to performance and quality of image, it's virtually the same. Except for the 14-24, it has more contrast, it has more vignette, and it's something that I've noticed is true for all lenses, whether it be prime or zoom, and that is because they all have extreme vignetting and are very contrasty. If you look at the quality of image, and if you pay attention while you're shooting, you'll realize that the center of the image is a lot brighter than the rest of the image, regardless of which aperture setting you're at, whether it be f1.8, 2.8, f4, f8, they tend to have that, but you only get to see that while you're shooting in camera. For some reason, you cannot see that when you take that into Lightroom, and at that point, they all tend to even up, whether you're shooting with the native FX lenses or with the shooting with the S-line lenses. All I'm saying is that when I'm shooting, I'm looking at the monitor on the back of my camera, I see that there's extreme vignetting when it comes to the S-line lenses. I see the fact that it's darker towards the edges and it gets extremely bright towards the middle. But when you're shooting on the field, you know exactly what I'm talking about when you're shooting with different types of lenses, and especially if you're shooting with FX glass and S-line glass. So let's look at the 14-24. It's an extremely nice lens. It's solid, professional build, and it feels a lot heavier and heftier than that 16-35 because this one has aluminum or alloy built into it. The only parts that are plastic are the rings, 2 rings, while the other one's still alloy. So you have the focus ring, and that ring is stepless. It's nice. It does not have any points of it that tell you exactly where you're at, but it has a display and a display button, so you can choose what it is you want to see on that display. It also has an L, FN button that you can customize within the camera to be whatever it is you may want. But the rings themselves, they are plastic, and the only one that is not stepless is the focal length. The focal length stops completely at 24 or 14 depending where you want it to be. So most of the time you'll probably be shooting at 14. Then it has what would have been the aperture ring, but this aperture ring is customizable. You can make it be whatever you want. Well, it's limited to whatever functions or whatever functionality there is available within the settings of the Nikon system. If you're using video though, I still think that this aperture ring would still benefit from being an actual aperture ring because it'll give you that stepless feature that you're after, especially when you're going from one scene to the other, that's darker to light, light to dark, or whatnot. If you want to use that, it's perfect because it's stepless. The only other button that this 14 to 24 has is this button that is automatic to manual, and that is to control the focus ring. But if you are on automatic and you touch the focus ring, it still takes over. The front element of the camera, unlike the prior 14 to 24s, is not as oval as it used to be. So with the extra hood that's included with this lens, you can actually use some filters, much larger filters that will also cost you a lot more money. But unlike its predecessors, at least this lens was built to use filters. The only difference between both of these lenses is the focusing noise. The focusing noise when it comes to the FX line is loud. So if you have that microphone right on top of your camera, it will capture that noise of the focus shifting back and forth. The S-line lens, that noise is completely gone, so you can shoot with a microphone right on top of it without an issue. So based on the fact that the 1635 is $1,000 and the 14 to 24 F2.8 S line is $2,100, I would say that the winner would be the F4 at $1,000. And that's because it's a lot cheaper, it can perform the same, you gain length, and not just that, but the quality of image is virtually the same. When it comes to video, then I would say that's where the benefits start shifting more towards the S-line lens. Not just that, but it's also sharper. But the sharpness is not that much. If Nikon wants to make a 16 to 35 f2.8 for the S-line, that would be the one to purchase and would be a much better lens than both of this together. The 16 to 35 as it is right now, I cannot say you can discard or say that it cannot perform equally as good or better than the Z-line lens. The Z-line lens is part of the trilogy. It's part of a whole new line of lenses that are actually perhaps a little better when it comes to use in the Z-line, but only better when it comes to video. As far as performance, quality, and everything else, I still think that the 1635 is still a much better lens offering option right now compared to the Z-line lens, which is $2,100. Now, that's just my take. I leave it up to you to actually make your own judgment, make your own videos, and do your own comparisons because it is a big difference. If you want to save that money and spend it on something else, then I would say you can even buy another prime lens. As it is, and as it stands, I would not say do not buy the 14 to 24 because it's an extremely awesome lens. But when you compare both lenses, you only lose 2 millimeters focal length on the girth on the 16 to 35. But you gain 12 millimeters focal length reach, which is extremely beneficial when you're doing landscape and real estate photography. Being able to have that extra reach, I think, is much more beneficial than having that 2 extra millimeter of girth.